Messenger.
Not Messenger. just
Okay, we're gonna go live soon. We're live. Todd, we live?
Yes, it just came up. Board of Selectmen meeting,
Excellent.
correctly labeled.
Excellent. No big spot, no blotch, no nothing. We're actually clear tonight. All right.
Over there.
I'll check that part. Yep, clear.
Very good. Yeah.
He
okay,
seemed
great.
to think it was a split screen.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Okay, everybody, good evening and welcome to the regular Board of Selectmen meeting for October 18th, 2021. Candace, would you please start our call to order?
Candace Bouchard.
Todd Oshalashi?
Melissa Bird.
Josh Kelly.
Andy Perez.
Sheila Sedlak.
Jack Bork. Stephen Sedlak.
Linda Bravo. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As all of us know here, we're going to recess to a special town meeting right now, and then we'll be back to do our regular meeting. I don't think I need a vote to recess. I don't believe I do.
No.
Not usually do.
Okay, may I have a motion to?
Motion to
Thank you,
adjourn
Todd, to
to special town
recess.
meeting.
May I have a, thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Unanimous? Okay, so I would like to call the special town meeting of October 18th, 2021 for the purpose of looking at the easement release at former subdivision on Platte Hill Road. Sheila, could you read the legal call of the meeting,
Yes, I can.
please?
Let me just. The legal voters of the town of Winchester and those entitled to vote in meetings of said town are hereby warned and notified that a special town meeting of said town will be held in the Pete Francis Hicks Room, Town Hall, 338 Main Street in the town of Winchester on Monday, October 18th for the following purpose. Shall the town of Winchester authorize the release of the declaration and grant of conservation easement held by the town of Winchester, filed in volume 366, page 1124. Release the drainage easement in volume 366, 1144. Release the surety bond agreement in volume 366, 1157 on property known as Platte Hill Land LLC, also known as Roskin Property, and release the declaration and grant conservation easement, all held by the town of Winchester. And the second cause is to take any action deemed proper to come before this meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so at town meetings, I'm not always the moderator of it, and the moderator is chosen by either a selectman appoint for like the annual town meeting, or the body itself can choose the moderator. I am glad to be the moderator for this, but I cannot automatically assume that role. So is there anyone else that wants to moderate the town meeting? I'm supposed to say these things 3 times. Anyone else? Anyone else? May I have a motion to make me the moderator? So moved. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you,
Second.
Steve, for the second. All in favor? Now, the other thing we have to do at town meeting when we vote is we have our little cards. I don't need them right now, but we will need them. So as the town clerk just read, the purpose of us being here is to release easements on a subdivision at Platte Hill. And the reason we are releasing them is because it's no longer a housing development like it was originally planned for when these easements were, I don't know if the easements were attached for that purpose or for something else besides that. And now the solar farm is going up there and they have requested this. So I'm gonna ask our town manager to give us a little bit more background on it. After he gives us background, I'll ask for questions from anyone.
Well, and actually, I believe we have one of the developers, if you wouldn't mind coming forward. And if you would like to speak a little bit about the development that you've proposed at that site, share with the group, and and then I can fill in any gaps from the town's perspective.
Sure, do my best. So, when we bought the land, there were 27 lots and numerous easements and drainage easements and conservation easements and bonds tied to it. The subdivision arguably automatically expired many years ago because it was never built and the permit was only good for a certain amount of years. But all of these things, I think there were 16, 18 of them are named on title, even though they had little or no effect. So we had to go ahead for our financing purposes because our lenders want everything nice and clean. We had to go ahead and clean all this up. So on our own as property owners, I think we got rid of or released 13 or 14 of them. The planning board released several more at their last meeting. And these last two encumbrances had to be released at town meeting. And my understanding is, if I remember correctly, the bond itself was released at the planning board meeting, correct?
That's
so
correct.
We're really talking about a driveway drainage easement for which the drive will never exist because it was part of the subdivision, and a conservation restriction, or as it's called here, a declaration and grant conservation easement that was held on lots 1 to 3, which are the sort of 3 of the front lots, of which they're all going to be placed into conservation anyway. So all of the land outside of the solar array, it's 79 acres plus or minus, is being donated to the Winchester Land Trust along with that lot 1. And the goal is to put those other 2 acres when they come out of particular option agreement with the prior owner into conservation also. So it's really just if you will, a formality. Our lenders are, more specifically our tax equity investors, insist that we clean up title, and so we're going through that process right now.
So do you have anything to add, Josh?
I don't have anything to add. I think it's pretty clear. We're looking at a totally different type of installation at that site than we were previously. The easements that the town currently holds at that site were for housing development, and now we're looking at solar. It's, from the perspective of the developer, time to release the easements that were in place prior.
So I'm going to ask if anybody out in the audience has any questions. You want to answer it, or anybody on the board want anything answered? I know this was introduced to us prior to this as a board, so I think most of us are well aware of the issues and the details on it. But anybody in the public? Anything further to add, Josh?
No.
Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion to release the easements, and the motion is recommended at the bottom of the action page, so if somebody would like to do that. People in the audience can do the motion too, if you'd like. It's up for grabs. On this handy dandy thing here, if anybody wants one. We got extra copies right on the table. Just tell me who wants to do it, I'll pass this to you.
I can make the motion.
Now, you are a resident.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the scheduling.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
we did this. That's
Oh,
not.
that's the wrong one? That's not the motion?
Sorry, that's not the motion.
Oh, I thought it was
That's not the motion.
If you skip the middle part, though, and read the last part, that would be a correct motion. That the town meeting release, and then
On the front part.
on the front.
Jackie said use the second, last sentences.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Here, I'll have it.
Yeah.
You
Sorry, I
want
don't have it in front of me.
it? Here, let me have it back. I'll do it. What the heck? So,
Where was it?
The town meeting release.
right here.
Yeah. Yeah, the move that the town meeting release, start there.
Move that the town meeting release the declaration and grant of conservation easement held by the town of Winchester on file, volume 366, page 1124 of the Winchester Land Records, and the town meeting release of the drainage easement held by the town of Winchester on file at volume 366, page 1144 of the Winchester Land Records, and convey such interest back to Platte Hill Land LLC. I have a
I
second.
will second that.
Thank you, he'll second that. Any other questions, any more comments? Feel free. Okay, now it's time to get out your handy dandy little voting card. Are you ladies joining us? Yes, we are. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Any abstentions? So it's unanimous. And that brings us to the conclusion of the town meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn the town meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Unanimous. Okay, now we are going to end our recess and come back to our regular Board of Selectmen meeting. And we move to item 4, which is agenda review. Is there anything anybody would like? If not, I'll move to 5, approval of minutes of our regular meeting, October 4th, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, now is the time for any additions, corrections for Sheila. Hearing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to number 6, citizens' comments. We welcome public comment. Speakers have 3 minutes and may speak once during this round. We have more at the end. Please give us your name and address if you'd like to speak. Anyone? Okay, maybe you'll speak at the next one. So that brings us to 7, town managers report. Josh?
Yes, good evening, everybody. First and foremost, thank you to all of the hard work that this board has put into reviewing ordinances over the past several meetings. I know at the last meeting, which I couldn't attend, you adopted the blight ordinance, and I want to share, not just with you, as I already have in my written comments, but with the community, that we are taking that effort very seriously. Since I've started, I've heard nothing but very positive feedback about the work that's been done under the blight ordinance that the town has in making sure that our community is staying not just beautiful and not just a wonderful place to be, but also safe. And the blight ordinance really helps with that, and we've begun to continue our efforts under the new blight ordinance to make sure that things are as clean and tidy as possible. Under the topic of COVID-19, I do want to share with everybody that at the moment, according to the last report, which was admittedly about 2 weeks ago, I'll be receiving another one soon from the Torrington Area Health District, we are one of the towns in the COG or in the Torrington Area Health District, I should say, that has the highest, among the highest positivity rates, and we are among the lowest vaccination rates as a town. That is not good news. I'm not sharing that to say that it's good news, but rather to say that we really need to double our efforts. If you have the capacity to, and you have the opportunity to talk with family members, encourage them to talk to their doctors about the opportunity to get vaccinated, and also make sure that you're masking up when you're in public places to the greatest extent possible. I believe it's important. I want to see our numbers be as low as possible, hopefully 0 in terms of positivity rate, hopefully 100% in terms of vaccination rate, and we'll continue to move in that direction as we're able. On the subject of the Director of Finance search, we do have our Director of Finance here with us today, Bruce Stratford. For those of you listening, if you hadn't heard the news, Bruce has announced that he will be retiring at the end of this calendar year, so we are currently in the process of trying to find a suitable replacement, which is extremely difficult, but we did have applications accepted through Friday, October 15th. I have not received the applications that the Civil Service Commission has been accepting, but I will at some point this week, and I will share at that point in time with the board what the results of that application process have been. Beyond that, I do want to share that we've had an opportunity, and it was actually the week that I was not able to attend this economic development activity, but economic development activities are continuing. I really want to thank Linda for attending at the employee fair that occurred over at Hubble Power Systems a couple weeks ago. It's great to have selectmen and also members of our Economic Development Commission get out to events like that, spread some information about the town and everything that it's offering. And I encourage any employers, if you're out there and you're listening and you'd like to hear more from the town, if you'd like to be in touch with us, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office. That's what we're here for. The Housing Plan Committee met for the first time on Wednesday, October 13th, and that group will continue to meet monthly and possibly with some irregular meetings sprinkled throughout that time frame in order to construct the town's housing plan. And as you might remember, we did receive a grant in the amount of $14,900 from the state of Connecticut in order to generate a townwide housing plan. These housing plans are required by the state for towns that have under a certain percentage of affordable housing. We do exceed that threshold, but as a matter of best practices and making sure that our community is as on track as any other, we want to make sure that we're completing this housing plan and have the best minds and best eyes on this as possible. Our long-range planning continues with infrastructure, and I'm also excited to see what further conversation there is to be had about the noise ordinance at tonight's meeting. I'll share a little bit more about the further work that I've done related to the noise ordinance when we get to that item on the agenda, which will be soon. That's all I have for my update tonight. Are there any questions that the board has for me?
Do you happen to know when the Torrington Health Districts, how often do they issue those reports?
My understanding is that it's every 2 weeks,
I thought so.
but I did not receive one today. I expect to receive one tomorrow, an
Thank you.
update.
So next is our finance director's report.
Good evening. I'm here to provide you some summary data of the operations of our general fund through September 30th, which represents 25% of fiscal year 22. Our revenues, property tax revenues collected are at 14 million, which represents 57% of our budget. Last year at this time, we had collected 13.5 million, or 55%. So we're running a little bit ahead of last year. We appreciate very much all taxpayers for their timely property tax payments in fiscal 22. Total revenues in the fund came to 14.8 million, or 42% of the budget through the first quarter of the year. Last year at this time, we were at 14.0 million, or 41% of the budget. The significant municipal aid that we received from the state was the pilot grant, $210,000, and that was everything that we had budgeted in accordance with the budget passed by the legislature. Total expenditures for the general fund through September 30th are $7.8 million, or 22% of the budget. Last year at this time, we were at $7.2 million, or 21% of the budget. At September 30th, the general fund had $17.1 million in cash. 11.1 million of that was invested. With respect to capital improvements, there's quite a bit of engineering activity going on in terms of preparing for road work that would be part of a long-term investment in the town's infrastructure. Also significant is the Hinsdale School renovation, which is ongoing. That committee meets every month. I sit as staff advisor to the committee and provide them regular financial information. Through September 30th, the town had spent $3.1 million on that project, 2.1 million of it going to the contractor. We've received partial reimbursement from the state for architect and engineering fees. We will be making another application to the state for reimbursement this next week. So those are the highlights of the activity in the general fund and capital improvement funds through September 30th. Be pleased to address any questions you may have.
Anyone?
Bruce, can you look into it for us for the next meeting, if online sports betting will have any effect on the Mohegan Peak grant? Will it increase it or decrease it?
I will.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Well, Bruce will be here in case something comes up in your mind and you'd like to ask him. He usually stays. So at this point, we'll move on. Anybody want to, is there any highlights anybody wants to bring up from correspondence? Okay, boards and commissions, Steve?
Thank you, Candy. You have in your packet a list of some of the activities going on this month. In the first case, we have had interest from Troy Lemire, who we recently appointed as an alternate on planning and zoning. He's also interested in being on the Board of Assessment Appeals. However, you know, having had some conversation with a couple of you, it does seem appropriate that he look at one or the other and not risk the conflict of interest. So we will communicate with him on that, that he would be interested in one or the other, and we'll see what his response is. We also have a letter of interest from Tim Mcgrane, and you saw his paperwork in the packet. He's interested in being a member of the Recreation Board. If his nomination goes forward, his term would end in April of 2027. So we'll get started on vetting Tim, so he's under consideration. The next name, we're going to put into nomination the name of Leanne Marvin as a member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, a permanent membership with a term to expire in April of 2024, and I will make that nomination.
Second? No, just a nomination. Never mind.
Yep, it's okay. And so if everything else pans out, we will vote on her membership at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. Also, I'm going to place in a nomination the name of Sandra Griswold as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals to an alternate position, term to expire December of 2026. And so we will take action on that nomination at our next meeting as well. We have no appointments tonight or reappointments, and we want to acknowledge the resignation letters from Cassie Lacasse, a member of the Recreation Board, and from Jim Welton, a member of the EDC, and we want to thank them for their service to the community and wish them well. That's it for now, Candy.
Okay. Anybody with anything else?
I just have a question. Linda, maybe you can clear this up, because you've been going to some of the EDC meetings. Jim is only leaving the area for 6 months,
Right,
right?
that's correct.
So if he comes back,
He wants to be an alternate, but when he comes back, he'll apply to be an alternate.
when he comes back,
Correct.
okay. Because I know he's been doing a lot of valuable work on the EDC, and his letter says he's only going to be gone for 6 months.
Right.
I'm just wondering,
Yes,
He's living active.
right, and just to clarify, he has spoken to me directly and has stated his intention of being an alternate member. And there's an alternate member who will step up and take that permanent position.
Great.
So you'll see that shortly.
so the alternate member who steps up and takes that position, do we have to appoint that person?
Actually, it would be, because it is an unfilled, or it's an unfinished term that is already underway, I would be the one to appoint, and you would be the ones to recognize
Fair
the
enough.
appointment.
Anything else? Okay, so let's move on to the noise ordinance, which we are at the stage that this board will either agree that it should move forward, or that we will continue to do more work on it. So let me just make sure I get to the right page on this.
Candy, while you're searching for that, would you mind if I just say a couple words?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at the request of the board at the last meeting where I had the opportunity to be here and speak with all of you about it, it was requested of me that we create a noise ordinance variance application that would be in line with the ordinance as it had been written at that point in time, and that communication be shared out with the public about the fact that this noise ordinance has come forward. So I don't know if anybody here in the audience is here to talk about the noise ordinance in particular, but we did share information about the changes that are being made on social media. And there was also a direct email that went to a list of all of the different business owners and managers that we have on file through the Economic Development Commission. And attached to that was this noise ordinance variance application, which has been developed by staff and which has been approved by the chief of police, who will be ultimately the one to approve them if this new ordinance is passed. And so far, there have been very few questions about, what needs to be filled out, and everything seems to be pretty straightforward in the minds of folks that I've spoken with. But I'm not sure what else might be out there in the community. Any other questions for the board? I just wanted to share that that was followed up on, and lots of information has been shared out with the public.
So we are at the point where we are either agreeing to amend, or we're agreeing to amend and adopt this ordinance. So if we can vote on it tonight, or unless there was a lot more questions and you wanted to hold off again, we could, but right now it's been out on our website for a long period of time. We've made adjustments over the last couple meetings, so we are at the step to adopt the changes.
Josh, on the variance application that you passed out tonight,
Yes.
I heard you say that the chief has looked at that because he's going to have to enforce it. But has the town attorney?
This is in line with other variance applications, so to be honest, no, the town attorney hasn't seen this exactly, but this is based on other applications that have been used for many years in other towns and have stood the test of time in that regard. Certainly, it could be run by the town attorney before other variance applications are accepted, if you would be more comfortable with that.
My question was just whether it is necessary to do that or not, since this was created and it's an enforceable document.
True. I feel pretty confident with where we are right now, but I would be happy to amend my view if it was the board's wish.
No, I don't have any issue with it. I was just questioning whether he had looked at it, since you hadn't mentioned his name.
Well, adopting this ordinance will trigger the variance document. So the variance document is something that staff will use. We're not approving the variance document. We're going to approve the ordinance. So staff will just have to make sure they have the right information on that document. That's our process.
Need a motion, Candy?
I'm just waiting to see if anybody has any questions or comments on it. I'm not seeing any. I know it's awkward silence, but. Okay, so go ahead, Steve.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the amendments to ordinance section 195 and adopt as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Any other comments? If not, all in favor? Okay, unanimous adoption. So, Josh, if you could, this and the blight ordinance, send them to general code when you send the rest of the stuff up.
You got it.
Okay, so that brings us to new business. A is a request for easement at West Wakefield Boulevard. Josh, would you please review that?
Yes, I can. So, a little background for everybody here in the audience. There is a request from the individuals living at 215, and the owners, I should say, of 215 West Wakefield Boulevard. And those individuals, this is a bit of a saga that's been going on in town, but they decided to make improvements on the parcel without obtaining permits and through the various processes that we have to try and undo some of that damage and so forth. It was required by the town that they acquire a survey. And following that survey process, it was discovered that a significant part of the area that they believe to be their land, in fact, belongs to the town. So without any further action from the town, they would only be able to make improvements on the land that they own at that property, and would be unable to make improvements on the area that has been deemed to be town property. The lakefront lot that they own is labeled map 113, block 120, lots 9A through 910 on the town's GIS map, for anybody who's following along at home. For those of you who are looking along in the packet, the second page that you received, that looks like a map. It looks a little bit like this. Actually, it looks exactly like this, because we have the same packet. But there are two lines that you'll see. I'm sorry that it's difficult to read. This didn't come out as clearly as I had hoped. But there are two lines, one or both of which look like they run through a dock towards the middle right-hand side of the page. Everything between those lines, my understanding, is town property. So all of the construction that is in that space would not be able, and anything above that would not be able to be constructed. Anything below that is on the property that these individuals own. So they've requested that the town grant a permanent easement over the 50 foot by 12 foot strip of land adjacent to the property, which lies between West Wakefield Boulevard and the property that they own. So like between the road and that lot. And if it's approved, then of course they would be able to go ahead and build on that site. Moving forward, the work already conducted by this family near the property cost the town over $2,600 in damages to the nearby road. An invoice for those damages were sent to that family on August 16th. No payment has been received yet. And so it's my recommendation, given these facts as they've come forward to me, it was requested of me. Oh yes, and of course they would need, if they were to continue moving forward, they still would need to receive permits for the construction related to the improvements that they want to see made, and inland wetlands permits. But given all of the information that's come to me, I wanted to bring this forward to make you all as a board aware of the issue, make sure that I am honoring the request that's been made to have this come to your attention. But I would request that a written opinion on the matter be issued by the town attorney, that we refer this tonight to the town attorney, and recommend that no further action be taken by the town until the landowners have paid the invoice that was issued to them and dated August 16th, 2021. I think that's the way that we can move forward as a town in the best, most straightforward manner, make sure that all due consideration is given, but also recognize the fact that an improper procedure was undertaken by these individuals, and that they need to do right by the town and make sure that the damage is covered, or the damages are covered that they had caused.
So the process right now would be for us to refer it to the town attorney, because it does seem like there's some legal issues within that. And then the town attorney would guide us in terms of how to proceed. So unless anybody has any other questions or comments on it.
I have a question, Josh. This 2,614, is that just damages, or are those fines for the work without permits?
Those are only damages.
Okay, and are there no fines for?
To be honest, I
Negative permit?
don't have a recording of that right here in front of me, and I don't
Okay.
want to speak incorrectly.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, may I am Steeler 215.
I don't think we're
I
supposed
do
to.
have a check with me tonight. I wasn't sure if that's something I could give you tonight, or if I should bring it in tomorrow.
That's something that you can handle during business hours, but thank you.
Okay.
No.
I couldn't hear.
Huh?
I couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're gonna put a motion out on the floor soon, unless you have any
I have a
questions for
question.
Josh.
The 2,000 that Todd mentioned, is there likelihood that if this does not get resolved over the winter, there could be other damages to the road, and so that cost for the road damage could increase?
Now, my understanding is that the damage to the road has been taken care of by the Public Works Office, and that's how they came up with this number in damages, because they actually recorded the cost of repairing the damages done. So, no, I don't believe that there's any further risk of damage to the road at this time.
So may I have a motion to refer it to Kevin?
Yeah, I move that the Board of Selectmen refer the landowner's request to the town attorney for review and a written opinion.
Thank you, Linda, for the second. Anything else? All in favor? Okay, thank you. So that's that one. Let me go back up top here. All right, next up is, it's a resolution authorizing the town manager to sign documents for the state of Connecticut Deep Homeland Security Fund, and I believe we've had these before, so Josh, would you like to?
Yes, so on an annual basis, the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, or DEMIS, routinely will give out grants to individuals, to individual municipalities who have a emergency management director and who are paying for various emergency management expenses. So the grant is designed to pay for some of those costs, not all, certainly. And this is our annual application to receive those funds that we're entitled to. And the grant application itself has been enclosed.
Any questions for Josh? Can you just tell us a little bit about what it covers?
It covers, for the most part, the portion of time, because Steve Williams, as many of you know, is both our fire marshal, our housing inspector, and our emergency management director. My understanding is that this grant covers the amount, the proportion of the salary that we spend, or that we give him, that he spends on emergency management direction. And I'm not sure how we've calculated in the past, Bruce, the percentage of time that he does spend on those operations, but it is consistent with past years. This is not a change in the application that we're submitting to the state that we've submitted in prior years.
Bruce?
It also provides partial reimbursement for the cost of the emergency management building up on Waldron Street. We have various carrying costs to keep that building operating with electricity and heat and communications equipment. So this grant partially offsets the total cost of keeping that facility out.
Just for people that maybe didn't hear, because Bruce wasn't at the microphone, it also helps partially support the facility up on Waldron Street, our emergency management center. Any other questions for anyone? If
There's no
not,
designation of exact dollar, it's just an open request, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, somebody for motion, please?
I move that the Board of Selectmen adopt Resolution 21-19, supporting the authorization for the town manager to sign documents to enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management, Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deemed to be necessary or appropriate.
Have a second. Thank you, Melissa. Again, any questions?
Where's the emergency facility on Wallen Street?
Waldron.
Walden?
Waldron.
Walden.
It's kind of where the civil preparedness building is too. Well, it's the same thing.
Thank you. Go find it.
I think there's a big tower, radio tower.
Okay.
It's up on, off of Halliburton, I believe. All right, so, no more questions? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Brings us to another one, which is a request for authorization to submit a Brownsfield grant application. And we have not seen this before, so do you want to go into the details with it?
Sure, and we do have 3 individuals here, if it's acceptable, Mayor Perez, that I would like to bring forward to speak a little bit more about the grant application that we will be putting forward. If you'd like to approach the microphone, there's another chair on this side that either you could grab or certainly I could. And so this grant is a public-private partnership, or the proposed grant, I should say, would be a public-private partnership between the owners of 10 Bridge Street, of which we have 2 here. And then, as many of you will know, Rista Malanka, the Director of Economic Development in Torrington, and a helper on this project with the owners of 10 Bridge Street. And they came forward to the town and asked that we join in this venture with them, which is the 2021 Municipal Brownfield Grant Program application, where they have an opportunity as the owners of a building that has pretty severe damage and certainly quite a bit that needs to be remediated in terms of potentially hazardous materials. And this grant would give them the opportunity to have a total view taken by a professional organization. I'm not sure if that's administered by the state or a private organization, to see what kinds of materials need to be done and to attach a dollar figure to some of the remediation that needs to happen. Would you like to speak a little bit more about this grant and your vision for it?
Sure, thank you. As Josh has said, my name is Rista Malanka. I'm a certified city planner. I work for the city of Torrington, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here to help Jesse and AJ, who have been friends of mine and family for forever. And really, the vision for this property is just to see something happen to it. You know, it's really been underutilized for decades, and since 2004 has been vacant. The problem with buildings like this is there was manufacturing that happened in there before the 70s, before any of the environmental laws went into place. So there's contamination. And then when, you know, the industry kind of left the U.S., it left these big buildings with contamination and not a lot of uses to go back into them. So because of this, it's very difficult to find developers and find people who are willing to take that risk without identifying what that risk is first. So what we're asking for is $250,000 to seek an LEP, which is a licensed environmental practitioner who will do the additional assessment that's needed. That won't complete all of the assessment, but it'll give us a good idea of what's out there and how much it'll cost to remediate. It'll do a hazardous material assessment, which is what you see, the lead, the asbestos, the PCBs and the caulking. It'll tell us what that is and kind of the estimate cost to remediate that. There was also a phase 1 done, and there was 3 areas of concern on the site for brownfield contamination. But we don't know how significant those impacts are. They could be minor. Some of them had to do with underground tanks. Possibly the tank was removed. Possibly the tank is there and leaking. So we need to identify what those contamination is. Once we know that and we have an idea of the cost, then we can start to develop development plans and seek developers or become developers ourselves. The problem is it's expensive. It's, you know, $250,000, and banks won't finance it because it's high risk. It's a lot of money to put up out in front of pocket without knowing if you're going to come up with $500,000 of contamination or $10 million of contamination. So that's where the state steps in with these brownfield grants. They give them to the town. The town is responsible to do their proper procurement like you would any other consultant. You bring in an LEP, the LEP does the work. The town owns that work, the owners of the property have access to it. But if by chance they sold or stopped paying taxes or something, the city still owns that information and can share it with any future property owner as well. When you see developments like this, they really do have to be public-private partnerships. It is near impossible to find 100% private funding to redevelop something like this. And I think we see that with how long this building's been vacant. And that's kind of just a quick overview, but if you do have any questions or specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. And you know, Jesse and Anthony can talk a little bit more about their interest and how they kind of decided to take over this building.
Sure.
Well, the story goes that it was listed. We went down, Jesse and I, to take a look, and there were 5 other members of that were all business owners in town. And we took a look at it and said, wow, you know, it's going to take a lot of work, but we didn't want to have a property that just sat vacant any longer in our town, and we wanted to try to do something about it when the chance came. So we all got our heads together and created an LLC and took on the building and tried to find out, you know, what's there, what the town needs, what we can do with it, and this is our first step.
Could you, I know I went for a tour inside of it recently, could you just kind of give us a, you know, a view of both buildings? There's a front building on the riverside, and then there's a building behind that, the one in the front with the ceilings that have, and the floors that have, could you just do a quick,
Sure.
and then what's in that, where they threw all that
So
stuff?
the first building closest to, not on the Main Street side, the upper building. The roof had been redone, the windows had been redone, the floors are in good shape, you know, some cleaning, and I think, you know, it's a workable piece of property. The other building had, I guess the water had froze, or the pipes split, and that started causing some water damage. Then that affected how the roof was draining properly. It gained a big puddle of water that eventually collapsed the roof on the top and proceeded to wet and destroy every floor on its way down. I mean, it's just wood. We had a structural engineer come in and take a look and said everything seems straight, and you know, these are fixable issues with wood and beams, but it definitely needs some work.
And there's also that pile of stuff that was thrown in when the part on,
Yeah,
it was a Bridge Street.
yeah,
Right.
the building's filled with materials, and there was Played Again Sports was in there, so there's a lot of that. There was the video, there was the furniture store and floor coverings and so on and so forth. There's still furniture from there, so it needs to be cleaned out.
Which also needs to be looked at in terms of remediation, correct?
I think that just like highlights another important point about the timing of this. You know, those are historic buildings, and we would love to see them restored. But if they continue to sit this way for much longer and many more winters, they're not going to be. The roof's already damaged, and that's just going to keep rotting until it's not salvageable anymore. You know, from what our take is most, if not all, of the building is still salvageable, and we want to keep it that way. So this will help get that first step and get that rolling so that we can get a development to this property.
Is this a rotating brownfield fund that we've used in the past?
No, this is not a revolving loan fund. This is, the state of Connecticut has, this is round 14 of their brownfields program. I believe they have 17 or 18 rounds planned. They are significantly funding the brownfield remediation right now. So this is a grant. You apply to the state. If awarded, it's a reimbursable grant, so the town would pay for the invoices and then submit reimbursement to the state, just like any other state grant you would have. It's a full contract, everything else.
I have several questions. First of all, we're not talking about the building that's already being rented, right? You don't own that. You own up to that building?
Yes.
Okay. And was this something that the previous owner could have applied for? This brownfield program?
Yes, they're not applying. The town would apply. There have been several rounds before this, that if the previous owner did want to partner with the town, I think that option was there. But, you know, I don't know those details. But this is something that we are aware of, and I think would be a good opportunity for this property.
Isn't this what Waterbury used at the big cleanup down of Anaconda, part of the money
This is
from the
what
state?
almost all major brownfield redevelopment has used throughout the state. You know, in Torrington alone, I have 4 or 5 brownfield grants from the state and working with them. What the state likes to see is redevelopment plans and developers at the table. Or, you know, worst case scenario, you don't have a property owner, gets tax delinquent, the town owns it, now what does the town have to do with it? And the state will work with the town in that case too. But they're happy when you have somebody at the table who's paying taxes, willing to, you know, invest the money in it and do a redevelopment project. They look at that favorable, as far as their rankings go. Torrington, or Winstead is also a distressed municipality, so that will also give us, higher rankings with the application process.
All right, it says on the application form that the town is the applicant.
Correct.
And then there's a page that says, is the applicant the property owner? And it's marked yes.
That should be no.
That's on page 4 of 27, the top of page 4 of 27, section 3. Is the applicant the property owner? And that's marked yes. That should be no.
Okay. And some of the confusion that might arise from this, Jack, is that we have had several people that have been filling out this form. So I apologize, but from different perspectives,
Yeah.
I think that there was maybe a little confusion, at least on that question.
And I think that if the council decides to move forward with this, you know, we would meet with Josh and, you know, look through and go through all the details and finalize the questions before we actually submitted the application. This is just a draft that we put together at this time.
Okay. If, there's no obligation by the town if the owners of this property default on anything and this grant is here for the Brownfield, are we then, the town, taking possession of that building? If there's a
No.
default?
No. I mean, if there's a default on taxes, that's something completely separate from this grant. This grant doesn't obligate the town. There's no matching required. It does, I mean, the town does have to administer the grant, but there's no matching funds for the grant. It doesn't require that a redevelopment project happen. It doesn't require that, you know, anything, any responsibility of the town. Now, if the town gets the grant and, you know, they decide to walk away and the town doesn't want to move forward, you would just turn the funds back.
Because we've been involved in a building that had a grant work, and we ended up owning it, and they didn't own it. We just don't want to be in a situation where we are seeing the same thing, and this, when I saw the applicant property owner, that scared me.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. And then, can you explain to me, on the application grant, it says Property Transfer Act, CSG Section 22. I don't know what that means. Is the project site enrolled in property transfer?
The Property Transfer Act is a state of Connecticut act that says if there's known contamination on the property, and there's certain contamination that's listed, and somebody buys it, they have to do their due diligence, and they find out that there's contamination, the Transfer Act, they become responsible for that cleanup. And they, you know, have an enforcement action with the DEEP, and they register into a voluntary remediation program, and they go through all the steps. And that's just kind of the general overview. Usually at that point, you have attorneys and licensed environmental practitioners involved that highlight all that, what's the contamination. In this case, that was not required. That doesn't mean there's no contamination, it just means none of the contamination is known on the site that meets the requirements of the Transfer Act.
It has nothing to do with transferring the property back to the town? Or
Not to the town, no.
The town would have to foreclose on it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that, one of the reasons that Capital Products was the way it was, is because we did not foreclose on it. We chose not to foreclose on Capital Products. And then the other thing happened with it, but for a long time, we could have foreclosed, but we did not. And then if you look at the Transfer Act as it applies to 32 Lake Street, that's one of the reasons why we're leasing it and not, we did not sell it. And then the Transfer Act from a town to someone is a little bit different than a Transfer Act between private people. And the state also made the Transfer Act a little bit easier, if I remember, like 2 years ago.
Yeah, so.
But I don't know all the details.
Yeah, and neither do I, because they passed an act, but they didn't pass the regulations that go along with them, so we're still kind of in limbo with what that looks like, but did make some changes to it.
Linda, you had a question?
Yeah, just to make sure it's clear, you're asking for $250,000 to do just an assessment,
Correct.
correct? Do you have a plan? You're here, you want to do an assessment. We don't know what you want to do with that building. What is your plan?
So, there is not a plan yet.
There's no
And,
plan.
and so, in order to develop a plan, we need to know what contamination's on the site. And depending on the type of remediation, or depending on the use, will depend on the type of remediation. So if it is remediation that is, I don't even know, but, so there's remedial RSRs, remedial standard regulations, which say, if it's residential, it has to be cleaned to a certain level. If it is industrial, it's a certain level. If it's daycare, so they have all these different levels of remediation based on the end use. But we don't even know what the contamination is out there to know what uses we can use. Can we even clean the property to a residential standard if we wanted to do housing? Does it have to be industrial? Can it be retail? So we really need to get this information first before we start developing a plan as to what that end use is going to be. It is in the downtown district, so we are limited to the uses that are already permitted in the downtown district, and really the uses that would be supported by the town. So, looking at a market study or some data that help inform that use. And we'll use all of that information, including the assessment, to determine if, we want to be the developers or if we want to start to seek developers. And depending on the uses that could be permitted will depend on the type of developers we go after.
Well, isn't it also true that you would need this study even if you were to tear it down, right?
Correct.
Before
Right.
you demolished it, you would have to know what was in there anyway. So whether it's, you want to do this with it, and then you find out this is here, and then you wanted to take it down, you would still need to, you couldn't take anything down without knowing that.
Well, correct, especially with the hazardous materials, so without knowing what's there, it all has to go out what is called hot, which is very expensive considering the whole thing is contaminated. If you know what's there, you go in, you remediate it, and then it can just go off as regular building materials, which is much less expensive. And I'm gonna speak for them, but I'll let them also speak for them. I'm here helping them free of charge. They bought this property not to make a ton of money. It's really to see something happen with that building, and they want to be a partner with the town. So I think, as we move along this process and start to get information, conversations with this board, with Josh will be ongoing, and, we don't want to come in with a plan that's going to be contradictory to what the town's plan is or what the town's mission is. We really want to work with the town and come up with a development that supports the redevelopment goals of the town.
Is there a timeline? Do you have like a timeline for, if you submit this grant, is it a year? Would you have any idea how long that study would take?
Assessment could take a year.
A year?
It could.
Just for the study, for the
Yeah.
assessment?
Yeah,
Year.
once you get the contract, get awarded the contract, go through the contract process, go through the procurement process, and the studies are usually like iterative. So if you think of, especially when you come to the soil and the dirt, piece of property, and you do a grid and do a bigger grid, and okay, there's an area of concern over here, then you start to narrow it down to how big that is. So it's iterative, so it can take a little while, but once we start to get the information, we'll know more of what needs to be done.
Thank you.
Just wondering about the name of the private organization, 153 LLC? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a listing someplace of all the members or the owners?
Yes, yep, we have a listing. The 153 is what the cost was that Marty sold it, was $1.53. So that's why we went with that.
So you're registered with the state as an LLC?
Yes.
And Jesse? Yeah, Jesse. That's you? Okay.
But you guys are also paying taxes and everything, right, right now?
First thing was get it caught up.
Well, these are buildings, actually, if you let it go, it's still on Main Street. No matter what happens, it's still one of the visuals of the town. So I would support this proposal. So I think it would be, because we know you can't do it, you can't do this alone. I mean, if we won that lottery a few weeks ago, we probably could have, but nobody keeps letting us win. It win in Minnesota or wherever it was, but, so anybody else on the board have any other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion for it.
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the submission of a 2021 Municipal Brownfield Grant Program application to the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development in partnership with the owners of 10 Bridge Street for the assessment and remediation of environmental contamination found at that location, and that the town manager, Josh Kelly, be authorized to sign any and all forms required for the execution of this grant application submission.
I'll second.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
All we would ask is if you could just, give us periodic reports if there's something, so that he's a busy man. So if you guys could help him with the report on this, that would be great. Okay, next up is our usual regular refunds as recommended by the Collector of Revenue. Josh?
Yes, so on the docket today, yes, Bruce, if you want to come and speak a little bit, I can say in summary that you're looking at $5,672.56 in motor vehicle refunds, $40.21 in real estate refunds, for a total of $5,712.77 in total refunds. For a variety of different reasons, as you can see in the documentation provided. And Bruce is here to answer any questions that you might have on
Josh, remind me again, CFC,
certificate of correction.
that's, okay.
This is our usual every meeting almost now.
So one of the features of this particular reimbursement, or these refunds, have to do with the activity of the Board of Assessment Appeals during the month of September, where residents had the opportunity to appeal the valuation assigned to their motor vehicles. And we had, I think, 32 cases that were presented to the Board of Assessment Appeals, and they resulted in 27 different vehicle adjustments. And so what you see in this group of 48 refunds for motor vehicles, 18 of those relate to this activity from the Board of Assessment Appeals. So that's why this group is rather large. And I think the one that you addressed one a couple weeks ago that also had multiple cases from that Board of Assessment Appeals activity.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please.
I move the Board of Selectmen authorize the refunds recommended by the Collector of Revenue in the amount of $5,712.77.
Thank you. Is there a second, please? Thank you, Linda. Any other questions? All in favor? Okay, thank you. No one's here for 18, so, for 13, so 14, Selectmen's comments and reports. Anyone? Candace?
I'd like to bring everyone up to date on the lights on Main Street. So we finally have a resolution. We've identified 2 areas, which are dangerous areas on Main Street, that are unresolved at this time, but Eversource has done a lot of research. So the main area of concern is around the YMCA, because there's no lighting on either side of the road there. But apparently, they're claiming, I don't know that this is true, that there was damage done to the wiring underneath at the medium when it was installed. I'd have to go back in my records because I don't believe that those lights have always been out since that time. But regardless, they're just saying that they've replaced all of the light heads on all of the streets, on all of the decorative poles in Main Street and East End Park. You'll notice that they're all LED and a lot brighter. They've replaced 2 poles. One that's been missing since 2013 at the base of Union Street on the Riverside, and also the pole that was hit by Public Works in the winter. So we have all of our poles in place. And there's one other pole, it's number 38 across from Kent Pizza. It's not a decorative pole, that needs to be repaired as well. But those repairs will take probably until the end of the year. So they have to bring in different organizations to research and find the electrical outage and replace them. But on a really amazing note is they're going to paint all of the poles black for free. So we have to have all of the hardware removed, all of the banners removed, and they hope to get that done before it gets cold, so where they can't paint. So I've been working with Josh and purchasing to get contractors to remove all of the hardware and everything so they can paint, and then buy new black banding so you won't see the silver banding anymore. It'll be the same color. So that's really exciting, and this is all being taken care of by Eversource for our years of torture and inactivity. So,
Thank you.
Candace, thank you. I wouldn't have believed that it could happen.
Good job.
was thanks to Eversource hiring someone from the military, literally, who came in March and has been working on this since March.
And your persistence.
So, thanks.
Anybody else with anything? Okay, Steve,
I move we adjourn.
Second?
all in favor? Okay, see y'all later, thank you.